70% of talented, hard-working people will never reach their potential. And that's because of one reason, one cognitive pattern. In this video, I'll show you what that pattern is and how to overcome it. I once worked for a CEO who ran a group of very successful online businesses. And he was also, and I say this with full confidence, one of the most narrow-minded, incompetent people I had ever been around. And for years it baffled me because I could see exactly where his thinking was weak. I could see the gaps he couldn't. And yet he was winning big, consistently. I kept coming back to that guy in my mind for years. How was the success of such a person possible? It took me building and losing companies of my own to finally understand why. He was simply too ignorant to doubt himself. In psychology, that's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. People who lack metacognitive ability to accurately assess their own limitations. And that inability to self-doubt was his single biggest competitive advantage. Meanwhile, you can see your gaps clearly. You're intelligent enough to know exactly where you might be falling short. And that awareness is eating you alive. The cognitive pattern I mentioned at the start, it's called imposter syndrome, a persistent internal experience of doubting your own achievements and feeling like a fraud despite clear evidence that you belong exactly where you are. And here's what makes it brutal. It hits hardest not when you're failing, but when the stakes go up. I give you a few examples. Say you just raised capital. The pressure is 10 times what it was, and the moment real problems hit, and they will, you freeze. Not because you're incompetent, but because your brain is telling you that you are. Or you step into a bigger role, more responsibility, more visibility. And instead of leading, you go quiet. You start second guessing every move. You lose confidence. Here's the imposter syndrome's most dangerous move. It tells you that action should follow feeling. First feel confident, then show up. That sequence is backwards, and it will cost you years. Confidence is not a prerequisite for performance, it's a byproduct of it. Every time you wait for the feeling before taking the action, you hand imposter syndrome another year of control over your life. But there's a very effective 3-step protocol to overcome imposter syndrome, one I've personally used and keep using to this day. I'll now break these steps down and tell you about one big mistake that makes the whole thing stop working. So, step 1, you have to name it to tame it. There's a good reason Alcoholics Anonymous make people say out loud in a room full of strangers, "I'm an alcoholic." It's not theater, it's neuroscience. You see, naming an emotional state activates the prefrontal cortex, the rational part of the brain, and pulls power away from the amygdala, the emotional threat response system. The moment self-doubt locks in, you do the same thing. Out loud or in your head say, "This is just imposter syndrome. This is not reality." And then witness the paralysis soften almost immediately. Now step 2. Shift from "I don't belong here" to "I'm still learning." Imposter syndrome gives you a fixed identity statement. "I don't belong here" or "I don't deserve this." Don't try to argue with it. Don't try to convince yourself you do belong. Your brain will reject it. It knows you're bluffing. So instead, shift it slightly to "I'm still learning here." You see, "I don't belong here" is a verdict on who you are. But "I'm still learning here" is a direction. It keeps you moving. That small shift takes you from a defensive position, where you're protecting yourself from being exposed, to a discovery position, where you're genuinely curious about what comes next. And that's a big deal. That's the difference between stalling and growing. And step 3, you have to separate feelings from facts. Imposter syndrome is remarkably bad at surviving written evidence. So take two columns. On one side, write what you feel, and on the other side, write what is actually true. Feel like you don't belong here? Write down exactly what got you here in the first place, the work, the decisions, the results. Or perhaps you feel incompetent to handle this. Write down every time before when you weren't sure you were ready and figured it out anyway. Feelings feel like facts until you put them next to actual facts. Then they start to look what they really are. They are threat responses, not reality. You're taking the power away from the amygdala and giving it back to the rational part of the brain. This protocol works extremely well, but it becomes ineffective if you make the following critical mistake. Most people treat it like a cure, like once they work through it, they'll finally feel ready. And then they'll act. Remember, that's imposter syndrome's master trick. It convinces you that action should follow feeling, but the protocol only works when you are already moving. It helps you move faster with more clarity, with less noise in your head, but it does not work as a getting ready tactic. You don't need to stop the doubts entirely. You just need to stop letting the doubt make your decisions for you. If you want to understand specifically how imposter syndrome is affecting your decision making right now, not in general, but for you, I built an assessment for that. It takes a few minutes and it'll show you exactly where the pattern is hitting hardest. Links below. I'll see you there.